Okay, looks like we are live. Welcome to the final program of the 5-part series, Genealogy Basics. Woo! Today we're going to be talking about DNA testing. So hello, my name's Lisa Austin. I am of the Grass Valley Library. Laura Papani of the Doris Foley Library was not able to make it today due to unforeseen circumstances, but kudos to all of her help with this project. In the background, we have Maggie Gilmore, the manager of the Grass Valley Library, who is helping with YouTube and Zoom and Facebook. So thank you, Maggie. I am not going to go into a lot of science here. There are plenty of YouTube videos that discuss that. You can watch Family History Fanatics, Genealogy TV. There's just tons of sites that discuss DNA. So this is an overview. So in terms of DNA testing, there are caveats. They are not very accurate. You have to look at 20 centimorgans or higher. Police can get a court order warrant using DNA. Some of the tests will say for entertainment purposes only. Always read the small fine print. And there have been lawsuits by the Native Americans to ban DNA tests that claim, Native American heritage and so on. Origin tests can sometimes change. I'll be talking about that later. And they're constantly improving the algorithms. There are two methods for taking the DNA. One is the spit test, where you spit into like a little vial, and then there's the swab, which is kind of like a toothbrush. You just swab the inside, or sometimes like a cotton, like a big Q-tip. It just depends on the test. And there's the three types of DNA testing. There's the autosomal, the mitochondrial, and the Y chromosome DNA. And I'll talk more about that later. You should always test the elderly first. So, yeah. And then always consider privacy. And ask yourself, what is my priority? Is it the surname matches? Is it finding long lost relatives? Is it your heritage? Or is it health? Because a lot of these DNA tests are very different. Next slide. So autosomal, the autosomal DNA, that covers all of your members of your chart a few generations back, versus the Y-DNA, which is your father's line. It's your father's 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 line. And then there's your mitochondrial DNA, which is your mother's 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 line. So it's the maternal line and the paternal lines, but autosomal is the one you really want to take for the most part. The thing that's great about autosomal DNA is you can find second and third cousins on these tests. Let's see. If you're taking a Y-DNA test, it has to be the male in the family, and then for the maternal line, it has to be the maternal line or female that's taking the test. So if you want to find out more about autosomal DNA testing, you can go to the International Society of Genetic Genealogy and look at the comparison chart. And next slide. So one of the tests that you can choose from is the ancestrycom test. It's probably the largest database of all the companies. They have cousin matching, and this test is usually goes back 6 to 8 generations. Most of these tests, the popular ones, go back 6 to 8 generations. You can import your data results into family tree DNA to get more matches, and then there are relative matches on this site, and it is probably one of the best sites for cousin matches. And they recently updated their ethnicity results. So, and then you've probably heard of CRIgenetics.com. This is a heritage site, heritage only. There's no cousin matching, and they claim they can go back 50 generations. So I guess you can match though with famous people. You can get a better idea of migration of your ancestors through heritage type of tests. They have health reports on CRI, and they use anthropology and autosomal results. So that might help. It may give you a bigger overall picture of your family history, especially if you have a lot of brick walls. I used a company, which is no longer in business, that was similar to CRI, and it opened up my eyes to other sources that I should check. So say, for instance, you have the name Martin, and you can only go back just a few generations, and you're just stuck and you can't figure out why. But if you look at one of these heritage testing sites, you might realize that they were probably Spanish and their original name was Martinez. So that's something to think about. Okay, now family tree DNA on the next slide. Family tree DNA has Family Finder. It is a cousin matching site. It goes back 6 to 8 generations. This test is the most ancestry focused. They have family projects. So I joined a Monte DNA test or DNA project. And so they have DNA results. Always check for the earliest results. They will have a distribution map and also will give recommendations to other projects. I'll go into more of that later. So with family tree DNA, they have advanced relative matches. They have My Origins. It's a breakdown of countries. A lot of the testing sites have this. There's the Ancient Origins, which shows a percentage of hunter-gatherer, farmer, middle-aged invader, and so on. I don't take them too seriously. They have the chromosome browser, and you can compare your relationship with someone else on the browser. There's data download. You can download your raw data results, and they usually keep your information for 20 years. Some companies discard the results after 6 months. So you'll have to take a look at that when you're researching companies. So here's an example of a family DNA project. Now this is the next slide, sorry. This is the Monte family DNA project. And so across the top, you'll see kit number, paternal ancestor name, country, and haplogroup. And a haplogroup is a genetic group of people who share a common ancestor on a patriline or a matriline. So If you look at some of the names, ancestral names, this is a Y-DNA chart, compilation on this project. So you'll see a Hans Jacob Monte. He was born 1691 in Bern, Switzerland. Well, I knew I was descended from him. And so I thought, well, I will see if he's on Google. So I Googled his name and I found, next slide. Next slide, thank you. This web page. So I got with this web page 2 generations back. And so I was very excited. So what you can do, you don't even have to join a DNA test site. What you can do is say, for instance, your last name is Gilmore, and you want to see if there is a family tree DNA project. So just Google Gilmore family tree DNA, and up will pop one of these Y-DNA classic charts. So you can access these charts through Google. So in the last program, I introduced you to animated Lizzie Hutchison. Well, this is her maternal family line. And so this is where her ancestors came from. And I could kill my ancestors for leaving. So next slide. Now the next test is MyHeritage.com. They have cousin matching, and you can go back 6 to 8 generations. There's a MyHeritage community. Their DNA tests are affordable. They have discounts. Their focus is Europe and Israel, while some of the other tests are more American focused. And I guess you can also do triangulation. So another test is 23andMe. That's another popular test. It has cousin matching, and again, you can research the DNA testing goes back 6 to 8 generations, and they have family tree builder, trait reports, health reports, relative finder, and you can import into family tree DNA. So that's always nice when you can do it. I wish more people would import into family tree DNA. They also have ethnicity segments. So next slide. We have Living DNA. This is a UK-based company. They have regional DNA, sub-regional DNA, DNA matching, and specialty DNA. I didn't go into a lot on Living DNA because I think it's more focused for the UK. Another test is Circle DNA. It's more health emphasized. It has detailed health reports. It costs more, and it's not ancestor focused. So. And then there are some other companies. There's Origin, Elysium, Vitagene, Home DNA, African Ancestry, and DNA Consultants. And the next slide is centimorgans. I'm going to discuss that. You'll hear people discuss centimorgans in regards to genealogy DNA. So this is an example from my mother's family tree DNA. Here's some examples of the matching. I blocked out the names for privacy. And so if you look across underneath their names, you'll see ancestral surnames, haplogroup, relationship range, shared DNA, and longest block and X match. So look at the shared and longest blocks. So in the first line, you'll see 15 centimorgans, and the longest block is 8 centimorgans. The next line is 10 centimorgans, and again, 10 centimorgans. And then the third person has 37 centimorgans, and the longest block, 37 centimorgans. So it's only like on one segment on a chromosome, it looks like. Remote matches, you'll get remote matches, and they are under 10 centimorgans on the longest block. So you'll see a relationship range. So the top one there says fourth cousin remote. And then the one below that's also a fourth cousin remote. I ignore those. I just don't even look at them. But the third person down, they have second to fourth cousin. So those are the ones I look at. And of course, they have 37 centimorgans. So somewhere there's a match, and it looks like it's probably the Brown line, because the Brown surname is highlighted under surnames. So if you are, if you've tested and you've tested with either your parent or your child, you'll have plus or minus 3,540 centimorgans. Siblings will be plus or minus 2,600 centimorgans. Aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, plus or minus 1,770 more centimorgans. First cousins, it's between like 500 and 885 centimorgans. Second cousins, 150 to 221 centimorgans, and third cousins, 55 to 160 centimorgans. So you're kind of getting an idea. As again, I ignore results that are under about 15 centimorgans on the longest block, and I always ignore fourth and fifth remote cousins. So compare relationships, compare surnames. Let's see here. So let's go to the next slide. So most of the DNA companies have an origin test, and you might get a 3% of a certain ethnic group. Those range from about 4 to 8 generations back. And the origin tests are not accurate, and the results can shift. So let's take a look here at this map here. This is my mom's line. It's 97% European. They're showing 58% Ireland, England, Wales, and Scotland, 39%. West African, 3%, Ghana, Togo, and Benin. But a few months ago, it was originally in Nigeria. So the results have changed. And then now we have a 1%, less than 1% hit in northern India and Pakistan area. So that's interesting, but guess what's missing? The Switzerland German line. So that's not even on there, even though I have a huge amount of Swiss. So again, they're not always accurate, and you might have more luck with a company that specializes in heritage. So, okay, next slide. So look at migration patterns of haplogroups. I mentioned again what the haplogroups are. That's the genetic group of people who share a common ancestor on the patriline or matriline. So this can give you a clue to the family history, where they originally came from. So, and next slide. So one of the things you can do with your DNA is to use something called DNA Painter. I'm just giving you a brief overview on this. There are several videos on YouTube on this subject, but you can analyze the results with your chromosome mapping. It's free with an optional subscription, and you must have taken an autosomal DNA test. You can have access to the segment data. You can transfer your data if taken Ancestry or living DNA. So, and then they have dimensions. It's a color coding of lines. And then there's something called Watu tool, which is called What Are the Odds? And I haven't had enough time to play with it, but it looks like a lot of fun. I think if Susan Rogers is in the room, she might have, I think she's played around with it. So on the next chart, we have a cousin chart. And one of the things people always wonder about is how they're related to someone. So say, for instance, you want to know how your cousin's grandchildren are related to you. So if you look at the chart, you'll see you in, what is it, aqua, I guess, and in the aqua color, and your first cousin to two spaces to the left, and then you go down, and it'll show that you are first cousins twice removed to your cousin's grandchildren. And then they also have on this chart how you're related to your in-laws. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So okay, next slide. So there have been a lot of people have been discovering their parents are not their biological parents, and now there are groups called NPE, not parent expected. This can be devastating to a lot of people, finding out that their father is not their father at all. So, you know, take that into consideration if you're going to be taking a test. So, and so finally, look for sales during the holidays. Competition is great. Many of the businesses have gone under, you know, even if they had a better product. Join a genealogy club. Create a game plan for brick walls. What other sources need to be checked? And remember, you know, in the end, when you're working on your genealogy, just cite your sources. Being hasty can cost time and money. And I just gave a generic citation source to the right. So do any of you have any questions? What programs would you like to see in the future? Any particular genealogy topics? Anybody? One of the things I thought about doing is local history. Oh, no, okay. So I wanted to look at particular areas in this town. A lot has changed over the years. Maybe you've questioned certain areas in this town, wondered what they were. For instance, I'm going to hold this up. I came across this little gem a few weeks ago. Maybe some of you old timers remember the chuck wagon style. Let's see if I hold it up. It's not going to hold. If I hold it really close, no, it's not going to work. Sorry. Anyway, I have this this old ad from 1964 in front of me for the chuck wagon style restaurant on Empire and Whiting Streets. Now, what do you think that was? What building? Living Well thrift store? That's what I think it is. So we can find out more. We can also do the genealogy of your house. So we can, you know, using some of the public buildings around town, we can research the history of these buildings, and then you can get an idea of how to research your own home. Does that sound good to anybody? Yep. Put ideas into the chat if you have any ideas of what you would like to see. Put your comments in the chat if there's something you would love to see us do. What a quiet group today. Anything? Yeah, I would like to talk about, I'd like to see ancestry and others. Oops, let me go back, pull this up. I'd like to see ancestries and others detailed if that's possible in regards to DNA. Also the benefits of digging, poor choice of words, into cemeteries, their websites. Is find a grave useful and so on from Facebook. Okay. Can you ask people? Okay. So yeah, we can do find a grave. I use find a grave. I've mentioned that before on one of our previous programs. And we've talked about cemeteries before. More on ancestry. Okay. Would any of you like to see a guest speaker talk about a more detailed account of DNA, more scientific, more on the ancestry? Anything? Okay, somebody wrote. Yes, I would like to see a guest. That was from Lola. All right. Okay. All right. So yeah, that's something we can set up. All righty. So again, I want to thank Laura Papani with helping us with this project. I don't know what I would do without her. And I want to thank Maggie Gilmore for helping out with the Zoom and the Facebook, and flipping the pages for me. And if you want to, let's see, yes, you can call or visit the Doris Foley Library in Nevada City for more information on accessing ancestry.com. And that is a wrap. So if you want to be a part of the genealogy name list, contact Laura Papani at, it's on the next slide, library.reference@co.nevada.ca.us. And her phone number is 530-265-4606. And that's a wrap. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.